anyway, yeah, Trump won on Tuesday. If you couldn't tell,
Oh my God,
we were surprised. That was kind of a shock because we.
Well, I wouldn't say surprised.
Shock is not the right word. You're right. Shock is not the right word. Surprise is not the right word. But we had both predicted incorrectly that Harris would take it by a slim margin. That was both of our pre-election predictions. Was that Harris would take it by just a slim margin? Alas, we were wrong.
Yeah, I thought
it wasn't slim at all. It was a fucking blowout, actually.
I thought, well, it was a blowout, but it was also quite slim because the blowout really came down to a few 50, 60,000, 100,000 votes in a couple of states.
Yeah,
but
that happened over and over and over again.
See, I thought that Harris was going to win by just barely in a few states.
Yeah. No.
But really, Trump won those states.
Yeah,
I knew Michigan was going to go to Trump. That was my, that's what I was guessing.
Yeah, when we were doing the coverage, I think when we left, Harris still held a slim lead in Wisconsin and Michigan, and I'm also pretty sure. Oh no, she didn't hold a lead in Pennsylvania. That quote unquote blue wall of like the Rust, or I don't know if it's considered the Rust Belt, but like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Harris led three of those, and then. It just fell apart. She lost every single swing state. Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia all went to Trump, giving Trump a total electoral win of 312 to 226.
We will win. We will win amazingly.
Yeah, like
bigly.
It's one of those things where bigly. Yeah, it's one of those things where like I'm not sad that Harris lost, but I am sad that Trump won. And you ask yourself, how can both things be true? And I don't know, fuck you, they can. It's not that hard.
Oh, I know. I'm in the same position. Listen, we all know that Harris probably would have been a less destructive choice than Trump. But at the same time, it's like, I think it's time Democrats really learn their lesson that this meandering towards the center, this, destructive thought process of fuck the progressives, fuck the leftists.
Yeah, aligning with Dick Cheney, aligning with Liz Cheney, aligning with
Liz
Bush.
Cheney fucking parading themselves with you. You're like, dude, this guy her father was a literal convicted war criminal, basically.
Yeah, well, he wasn't convicted, but he
convicted,
was.
But in the minds of Americans and the rest of the world, he was convicted.
Sure, I'll give you that one.
Legally, he was not convicted, but he was basically responsible for 1 million Iraqi deaths.
Yeah, 1.5 million Iraqi deaths or something crazy. Yeah. So it was a pretty huge electoral blowout. But as Kanan said, each swing state was kind of like close-ish, right? So like looking at Wisconsin as an example, it was 1 point. It was 30,000 votes in Wisconsin, right? That was the difference. Michigan, it was 2.8 million to 2.72 million, so 80,000 votes in Michigan. We're talking less than 100K, less than 50K in most of the swing states. I think Pennsylvania was maybe a little.
If Kamala Harris won, she wouldn't have won the popular vote. Even if she won those swing states, the 3 or 4 swing states, she would have won by like 200,000 more votes than she has now, and that's 4 million.
100%. Yeah. So like Trump got less votes than he did in 2020 by like I think just a couple million less votes, right?
Correct.
Harris got like 14 million less votes than Biden in 2020. So like yes, Trump was less popular now than he was then.
Correct.
Fair. Harris was exponentially more less popular now than Biden was then, and that's kind of saying something.
Harris was always a shitty fucking choice.
Yeah, it's always a shitty choice. But that's like where a lot of like leftists and progressives are pissed because like Biden hid his health problems, or the Democratic Party hid his health problems until it was too late, until they couldn't hold a primary. They didn't allow any kind of challenge to the reign of the Biden administration. The heir, Kamala Harris, just like snuck in. Nobody voted for her in any kind of primary. She was not chosen as like a Democratic representative. She wasn't chosen democratically. She was just like handpicked to be the nominee, whether you liked it or not. It was an obvious choice. We learned in 2016 this is a terrible way to run a campaign against Donald Trump, and they just said, hold my beer, we're going to do it again. And they did it again, and they lost. And so now they fucked around, and now they found out. Like,
basically just ran another, quintessential Hillary-esque style
with the
of
same
campaign.
bland white man running mate. What was his name? Clinton, Tim Kaine?
Tim Kaine.
Yeah,
Tim
like
Kaine.
a generic white man from the Midwest or whatever. Where I think Tim Kaine was from, like Pennsylvania or something. I forget where Tim Kaine was from.
Like
New Jersey, somewhere. I don't know.
Carolina. I think he was from.
Oh, really? Was he South?
So something. I wouldn't say South. I would say like something more southern.
I'll look it up. But regardless, it's like they learned nothing from their lessons, and they're going to learn nothing from this lesson too. They're already kind of blaming third-party voters. They're blaming Muslims, and we're going to talk about the liberal response to this, which has just been fucking awful. If you couldn't have guessed. Virginia, you're correct. He's Virginia, yeah.
He was like southerny, but not really southern.
Well, yeah, kind of like that.
I was off by
East
one
Coast.
state.
Yeah, you're one geographical state down. Yeah, so the liberal response to this has been actually quite disgusting. There's been quite a bit of like racist backlash and lashing of like I've seen tweets of like, I'm going to find every MAGA person I know who has like illegal immigrant family members and report them.
Yeah.
Let's see how they like it. And then there's been a lot of things about like Arab and Muslim people in Michigan of like boycott Arab stores. Like this is from liberals, boycott Muslim stores, like the boycott Muslim shops, boycott Arab shops, like do to them what they did to us type of attitude. And it's like people are like being incredibly disgusting.
Do to them what they did to us.
Yeah.
Fuck you, your entire fucking establishment organization that is literally guiding the White House right now is literally funding a genocide. I don't know what the fuck you want to hear.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck did you expect when you have literal bombs that are being dropped by Israel on innocent people in multiple countries now, not just Gaza, multiple countries that is funded by us, and then suddenly due to us what we were doing to you. Dude, you've been like fucking leftists over. You've been fucking
and ignoring them. They told you like I had a conversation with liberal like on Instagram. I'll show you the DMs. It was like it went on for a while. And I told this guy like I would have voted for Harris if she had just done one thing, which is like actually show some kind of movement toward a ceasefire or some kind of like recognition of like the value of a Palestinian life and like some kind of admonishment of Israel's war crimes. Correct. If she had done kind of anything that showed any, even like it would need to be like one step from symbolic or one step more than performative, like some kind of actual action, like her and Biden getting together to like sign an executive order like banning arms sales to Israel until like so much food is gone. Anything, literally anything. The bar was pretty low for me. If she had done anything about Israel, Palestine, or for the Palestinian people, I could have been convinced to vote for her. Maybe. And she just refused. And I know that there's a lot of people that needed less than I needed. Even like that probably would have supported her even if it was just a symbolic gesture or a performative or just a promise.
But she
just shut her mouth, dude. Or she leaned in the other way. She would go to places like Michigan, go to places with these like 90+% Muslim and Arab communities and like talk about Israel's right to defend itself. And it's like it's I guess Clinton said something about like
correct. They said
what was the quote?
In fucking Michigan.
Yeah, they sent Clinton to campaign in Michigan, but he said something at a rally about like that was very like pro-Zionist. I think he even said like Zionists Zionists have a right or something. I forget the actual quote, but it was something fucking off, completely out of pocket and like heinous to say to anyone really, but also in a community of like 90% Arab and Muslim. So it's like. And what the fuck did you think was going to happen?
Parading around Liz Cheney, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, taking like hardcore like war criminals.
20 years ago, these people were killing Muslims as well, like killing the Arabs as well.
Yeah, the daughter of the man who orchestrated the invasion and deaths of like millions of Iraqis or hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, and then send that guy to be like your spokesperson to these communities. Like, how did you think that was going to play out? So we have data from like Dearborn, Michigan, where it's a heavily Arab and Muslim populations in these the Muslim voters in Michigan, and this is the district too where Rashida Tlaib won. So like Rashida Tlaib won her seat. So like that'll be important later because I want to say that Biden won this district in this county in Dearborn, Michigan by 2-1 margin against Trump last election. This time around, 3-1. He won it by a 3-1 margin in 2020. So like we're talking huge, overwhelming support for Democratic president in 2020. This election, Trump won the Dearborn vote with 47%, while Harris got 28%, and Jill Stein got 22%. So if your argument is, because this is what we've heard a lot too, is if your argument that it's people didn't vote for her because she's a woman, well, that's simply not true, because between the votes for Harris and Stein, that's more than Trump. So like and both being women. So it wasn't about her being a woman. It wasn't about her being a woman of color, because once again, along that same ballot, on that same ballot in Dearborn, Michigan, is the president, where people selected Trump, and then one down they selected a woman of color, a Muslim woman of color, Rashida Tlaib. So it has nothing to do with her being a black woman. It has nothing to do with her being a woman. It has everything to do with her bombing their relatives. They're bombing their fellow countrymen, their fellow, whatever, however you want to call it. It's pretty simple. Like, people, Harris would have won had she not supported the genocide in Gaza.
It's literally, this is all down to the genocide. If that didn't happen, I guarantee you Harris would have probably blown Trump out.
And maybe like there's a little more to it than that. That might be a little reductive, because like it's not, Arizona and Nevada, she still lost, and like where that's less of an issue. But like there's a lot of other things, right? The Harris website still never had any kind of campaign or platform policies. They had never had any specifics. She never actually said anybody what she was for. It was all just vibes based.
She did say one thing, and that's like she wanted to offer first-time homeowners, like, was it $25,000 basically from the government for a down payment.
Okay, that's
the only thing.
A friend of mine just bought a house here, which is a pretty modest fixer-upper house or whatever, and the down payment was a little under $200,000. So that would have been, how much is 25? That's what, 12% of what they need for a down payment.
I was about to say an eighth. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's.
Technically for a first-time house buyer, you don't have to put anything down.
Yeah,
a lot of
12% and an eighth are the same. We did the same math. We just went there in different directions.
Yeah.
Shout out to us.
There we go.
Yeah. So my point is that like that's nothing, and so like that's a bullshit policy. Like it's something, I guess, whatever, but like it's really nothing. 25,000 is like what out of touch people think like a down payment on a house is nowadays, but it's like how much, 25,000 to $1 million.
Here's the thing: Trump also meandered the same way. He's like, I'm going to eliminate taxes on tips.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though, is that like Republican voters fuck with vibes-based stuff. That's their whole thing, is like they don't understand how taxes work. They don't know what a tariff is. Of course they're vibes-based because they have no fucking clue how government works. But Democrats are usually smarter than that. And we're going to talk about the educated vote here. But like Democrats are this isn't like a revelatory thing to say. Democrats are smarter than Republicans just across the board by like every metric known to math, like college degrees.
That's why a lot of people like turn around like, I'm too smart to look past your bullshit right now.
Yeah, and so that only hurt her. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So like, if you're only gonna do a shitty Republican-esque vibes-based campaign where you don't really talk, you just kind of like use buzzwords and have like Cardi B twerk or whatever, then like obviously people that are like, well, no, I want like actual facts. I need actual numbers. I need some kind of campaign advice or information. They're not going to vote for. So you have the genocide on the one hand, just an awfully ran campaign on the other that's all just brat summer vibes based. It offers no substance to anyone. While like meanwhile you have like guys who were like Arizona frat boys who were like supporting Trump or whatever, who are answering questions about why they're supporting Trump, and it's like, well, because inflation was lower with Trump, or gas prices, or whatever they're talking about. And it's like, I saw some interviews from Arizona people where like it's like, well, if you actually know anything about gas prices or inflation, like they're lower under Biden than they were under Trump. It's like, obviously you don't know anything.
No,
but nobody is countering that. Harris isn't out there saying, well, actually, no, gas prices are lower now under our administration. She's not saying anything of substance. So like, it's just all vibes.
Or you could just turn it around, like and this still perpetuates like how fucking stupid the Democratic advisors are. You know, these campaign advisors, how they're setting it up, what they're telling her to say. Because she could have easily just turned around and be like, actually, no, the inflation and all of these economic downfalls that are happening right now under our administration are actually Trump's doing. If you don't know much about economics, it takes a few years for actual economic and administrative laws to be placed and enacted. You know, sometimes they'll like, oh, we'll place this law, but it doesn't enact until 2 years later. Well, 2 years later is the fucking next president's term, right? And then it takes another year or two for the actual results of that economic plan to kick in. And if that's inflation, it takes years for inflation to rise. It's not like plan enacted, instant inflation. That's not how things work.
I remember that was always like the cringiest thing with like, because I used to be an Obama supporter in 2008, right? In 2012.
4 more years.
Yeah. Well, I remember like that was like, because I was smart enough to like defend that, because people were like, oh, there's a 2008 recession. Obama was elected president in 2008. It must be his fault. And it's like, well, one thing, he wasn't sworn in until 2009. So the crash that happened at the early 08 and summer of 08 had fucking nothing to do with Obama. That was years of Republican like
that's 2 terms.
It was Bush's tax rollouts and
then
all of the deregulation of banks, and it's just all this shit. And then I remember just talking to like my family of being like, so the recession is Obama's fault, and I'm like, dude, no, it isn't, man.
And
Sorry.
This is like the people that we have to fucking deal with.
Yeah.
We have to fucking hold their hand and walk them through fucking simple economics. We're not reading, fucking Marx here where we're like dissecting Das Kapital volume 1, 2, and 3. We're teaching them basic things like, did you know with tariffs, we have to, the company that is importing that product is paying the tariffs. And you're just like,
I still like love how Trump doesn't know what a tariff is.
Like, what the fuck, man? Well, it's like, what do you think? Because like, how do you think this works? And they're like, yeah, the tariffs are gonna return America. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, I don't think you understand this. Things are just getting more expensive.
Yeah.
Like, who do you think is going to take the fall for the higher prices?
And like,
we're going to take it.
You can't expect Republicans to not vote Trump because of like shit like that. But what you need to expect is on the Democrat side, like, to counter that by some kind of talking point. And Harris just never countered that. Like, it was like, you know what I mean? It never came to that. And like, sure, she offered some, like, I didn't listen to every single Harris like rally or campaign speech. Obviously, like, there's some policy like details, or no details, there's some policy like mentions, some policy vibes in there, but like it never went like as deep as like what it needed to be, what it should have been. Like, I was trying to go to her website, trying to find policies like, what is her stance on like weed? What is her stance on Medicare for all? What is her stance on like where does she want like a progressive tax rate to be at, like a 90% like 40s 50s pre area, or does she want some kind of like in between? Like, I don't know, because she doesn't know, because she never said. And then all the Democrats did was make fun of Trump for saying stuff like, what was he say at the debate when he says he has like the beginnings of a plan or whatever he said, remember?
Yeah.
And it's like,
you can't make the concept of a plan,
but you can't make fun of him if you were doing the same thing, if you don't have a plan either. And like, that was, I don't know, I found that very frustrating. Interesting. So we have that data for demographics, right? And so I was looking at education and education, people who have some college or college degrees that voted for Harris compared to Trump. So I'm going to break down some of this data for a second. So this is from the AP. It's an article on like the demographics of just the different groups that voted for Harris. And I'm looking specifically at education because that's what we're talking about. So people with either some college or a college degree for Harris, that's a total of 30 plus 29%. So what is that? 59% of people with college or some college. Yeah. For Trump, though, it's 33 plus 25. More people with some college voted for Trump, and just 4% less. It's 58 total percent to 57%. It's almost dead even between Harris and Trump. People with degrees, people who are on average more intelligent or at least more educated, it should never be that close between a Republican and a Democrat. But Trump only lost that by 1%. And that's my point, is that like educated people are split on Trump and Harris, which is like mind-blowing, and that's how bad of a candidate she was.
I think also, true, I will give you that, but I also think that somebody that is educated is usually well-versed in geopolitics, is usually well-read, and a lot of people that are well-educated just didn't vote. Or they voted.
Oh yeah, that's my point.
They just didn't vote. Yeah. It's not like they voted more for Trump. It's just like they voted less.
We know that, right? Because Trump only got 2 million less votes, but Harris got 14 million less votes than Biden. So it's not that these people showed up for Trump; it's just that they stayed home. Yeah. And like, you can't blame them if they have nobody to support, no real candidate of substance.
And it's like, it's not the voters' fault; it's the fucking politicians.
And I don't want to hear any bullshit about third-party votes, because we were looking over data. There was like no state that would have been switched by a third-party vote. Third-party votes,
not a single swing
which
state,
I'm actually sad about. I wish they had. I wish I could take credit for that. I wish I could say, yes, me voting for Claudia and Karina affected Harris. I fucked over Harris in a swing. First of all, I don't live in a swing state. We don't live in a swing state. So like, Washington was never up for grabs. Although not for nothing, but it was a lot closer than it had been. Like in previous years for Biden, Washington was not that close. It was like, I can pull up the actual Washington election results overall, Harris won by 58 to 38 or 39, 58 to 39. And I'll pull up the 2020 elections here in a second. But I wish I could claim that like our vote for a third party cost Harris a state, because then that would say something.
There was not more third party votes.
That's a bummer.
I was dead surprised. I mean, with the options that we have, with the amount of marketing that these third parties are doing over the internet, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. I mean, even like a big channel like Channel 5 with 7 million followers had, I believe they talked to Jill Stein about the Green Party. And I was just surprised that, they didn't get like 2-3% of the vote. They didn't get 1% of the vote. They got 0.5%.
Yeah, like 300,000 or something. Like it was like it's nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And I remember back in 2016, they had like 5% of the vote.
Yeah, there was quite a bit more. And I think, I mean, I don't know what to chalk that up to.
More.
Yeah, I don't know what to chalk that up to. I mean, I actually don't have any kind of data for that. Okay, here I have Washington's vote in. Okay, actually, it was about the same. It was 58-39. It was exactly the same. Biden, Trump. So I misspoke there. I'll admit that I was wrong. I thought Washington was closer this year than in 2020, meaning that people just didn't stay home while Trump supporters came out. But no, I guess that's not true. Anyway,
but
sorry.
Not for Washington State, though. That's the thing. It's just like for Washington State, people are just like, I'm going to vote for Kamala regardless because people are fucking liberals here. People like I was like, oh, Seattle is a fucking safe haven for fucking leftists. I'm like, there's no real fucking leftists here. Don't get me wrong. I take that back. There are a ton of leftists here. There's radical parties here. But I'm saying for the majority of the population who call themselves progressive or leftists, they're just fucking liberals that don't hate gay people, right? Or that are very open with social issues. Yeah. But they're not radicals and in any sense of the imagination.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, and I will say that there is a certain thing, because like there is a reality here. Before we move in and talk about some of the smaller stuff like the House and Senate and the governors and all those, I do want to just kind of touch on like that. While we understand and we don't support Harris and we don't care that she lost, we do understand that there is a reality of like people who are people of color or who are queer or in some way oppressed, for lack of a better term. Like there is kind of a more of a reality, and like we do live in Washington where I just want to like I was talking to this to my students, because I have some students who are kind of freaked out because I have a lot of queer students, and I was just like, well, keep in mind though that like I use weed as the analogy of like weed is a Schedule I narcotic federally. It is considered by Trump and by the federal government in general as bad, if not like worse than heroin. Marijuana is, and it is like the hardest drug you can do according to the federal government. And I can go to a dispensary on any street corner in Washington.
That's why I'm hardcore, man.
That's why you're so hardcore. And my point to that to my students was like, the point is that states have a lot more power than you think they do, and the president has a lot less power than you think he does. And so like, if Trump did some like heinous national concentration camp ban on queer people, like Washington would tell him to fuck himself. Like, yeah, what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, just like they did with weed. Like, and obviously it's not a complete 1-for-1 because it's kind of a non-enforcement thing with federal weed. But like, states have more power. And so if you are listening to this and you are kind of worried and you think that we're privileged white guys who can say this stuff because we are not on any kind of like list. For one thing, we're both registered communists, so we definitely are on that list. But for a second thing,
I'm also an immigrant
and you're a Muslim immigrant.
I'm a communist Muslim. Yeah. Like, bro, like I got that shit tatted on me. They know where to find me.
Yeah. So like, first of all, we're not quite as insulated as you think we are. Second of all, like, states have the power. So yeah, if you're living in Alabama and you're a queer person or a communist, we definitely feel for you. But if you're living in California or Oregon or Washington, you're gonna be fine. But
here's the thing. Like I get like the whole. I want to say the whole. I understand like the anxiety and the fear of this now happening with Donald Trump and a full roundhouse of fucking Congress and the judicial branch and the executive branch being under the hold of the Republican power. However, remember when your rights for abortion were taken away in Alabama, that was under the Democratic.
Yeah, that was a Democratic
administration. So
and a Democratic
these
House
people
and a
would not.
Senate.
Yeah,
or not House, but Senate. Yeah.
Yeah. So these people are. It's not going to make too much of a difference. What they were going to do, they're going to do regardless.
Yeah. Also, like, listen, go back and I challenge you to Google once again, because we had no policy answers for Harris, but try to find her stance on trans issues. And she was always very cagey about it. And her answer was, let the states decide. So her answer is the same fucking answer as Trump's. So like, let the states decide. That's code for, I don't want to touch that, because if I say I'm in favor of it, I'll lose conservative blue dog Democrats. And if I say I'm not in favor of it, then I'll lose the leftist base. So that's just a shady politician answer, because she isn't in favor of like trans protection. She isn't really in favor of abortion.
Because that just tells you she doesn't.
Yeah,
you don't know what she actually is.
She either doesn't know or doesn't care what her policies are, because she just wants power.
It's just blowing the wind. Where's the fucking opinion going?
So I would challenge. I'm seeing a lot of stuff of like, if you care about women, you'll vote for Harris. And I'm like, fucking Harris doesn't care about women. Harris doesn't care about queer people. Harris doesn't care about people of color.
If they did, they would have fucking implemented in the Constitution that abortion is a right.
And she wouldn't have fucking the highest like rate of like incarcerating black people in California, or like promoting slavery in California, like,
or laughing at the idea of legalizing marijuana in California.
or like shutting people up when they talk about genocide. So like, I don't know. I think just get your head out of your ass. Like, if you thought Harris was your savior, you are mistaken, and you like kind of not deserve this. But like, if you thought Harris was your savior, like it's a
wake up call.
Yeah, let this be a wake up call that she was never going to save you. You can only save yourself. We can only save each other. A corporate Democrat who was pro slavery and like anti-gay, anti-abortion is not going to save you.
Exactly.
Not that she was openly anti-abortion, but by all accounts, like by all rights, she was, because she never did anything to support it. So like, what's the difference?
Yeah, exactly. They could have ratified and codified into the Constitution
at any point.
At any point, executive order, abortion rights, Roe v. Wade. But they didn't.
Anyway.
They didn't even fight back. They just said a couple of cliches and puns about, oh, we gotta be careful. We got to make sure to fight back against fight back then. Do something. You're not doing anything.
Yeah.